There was one other question I have for you. I do appreciate all your information and your patience and helping everybody out here. And it's on First Timothy 3. So in this passage, in a lot of different translations, you have a lot of people saying that it has a bunch of male pronouns, basically, in the translations. It's a passage, of course, about deacons as well as or overseers, or however you want to translate that word.
The NIV, the ESV, the RSV, most of them have many different masculine pronouns. It turns, namely he, him, or his. In fact, in Greek, there's not a single masculine pronoun he, him, or his in the entire section, either for overseers in 1 Timothy or elders in Titus chapter 1. The passage begins, whoever desires the office of overseer desires a noble work. On Bible Gateway, there are 68 different translations. 24 of them translate that here's a trustworthy saving, whatever man desires the office of overseer, he desires a noble task. Changing whoever into whatever man, and adding the word he where there's none in Greek. An additional 22 had one or more masculine he, him, or his to that phrase. So our translations have misled us. The word for overseer, who desires the office of overseer, is a feminine noun. The word for the overseer must be is a masculine noun. But neither one implies that overseers must be either men or women. It was just conventional for different words to be given a different grammatical gender. Grammatical gender does not imply that it's referring only to a biological gender. Tim Freiberg, who himself is a complementarian, and edited the grammatical Greek New Testament, went through the entire New Testament twice, counting all the places where there are masculine grammatical forms that either must apply to women or could apply to women. And he found between 7,500 and 8,000 masculine forms that either must or could apply to women. That's approximately one per verse through the entire New Testament. It's extraordinarily common. Consequently, simply having a grammatical masculine form when referring to a group of people does not in itself imply that it's only regarding men, because the masculine form is what is conventionally used whenever you're referring to a group that includes both men and women. Some people say, but what about man of one woman? There you have man, and because it says man of one woman, it is correctly understood to refer to husband and wife. But it is a conventional expression. And the convention was when, and Paul could use it in the feminine form in 1 Timothy 5, when giving qualifications for widows, that they must be a woman of one man. But when Paul is giving qualifications for an office that could be held by men or women, he has to use the masculine form. That is grammatical convention. And it's a convention that is replete throughout the New Testament, 7,500, 8,000 times. So some people have said, well, it must be referring to the person must be a married man in order to be an overseer. But Paul himself in 1 Corinthians 7 says that he was not married.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Paul was an overseer of the churches because he's overseeing Titus over other churches. And Jesus was not married. And yet Jesus is called an overseer of your souls. So it's clear that, as Chrysostom explicitly states, that Paul is saying, if a person is married, the person must be faithful to his wife or monogamous. And in fact, monogamous is the closest equivalent in English to man of one woman in Greek. It even sounds alike. But and monogamous can refer to either men or women, referring to fidelity. The word man of one woman is an idiom. An idiom, it gives the entire idiom as an expression conveys the meaning. There's no word in idiom that means in man of one woman that by itself means faithful. But together it's an idiom referring to fidelity. And it is wrong to take one word out of an idiomatic expression and make it a separate requirement apart from the idiom. That is what's called sensus plenior, reading into a meaning a second meaning, and the context does not justify that. It's an idiom referring to fidelity in marriage. Furthermore, in verse 11, in verse 8, we have 4 qualifications for the office of deacon. And it says deacons must be 1, 2, 3, 4. Then in verse 11, it says women similarly must be, and lists the same 4 requirements in the same order in similar terminology. Then so we know that women can be deacons because they have the same qualifications. Then in the very next verse, we have a reference to deacons must be men of one woman. John Chrysostom wrote and said, men of one woman. This also applies to women deacons. Now, it's interesting that Chrysostom would say that because Chrysostom elsewhere wrote that women are inferior to men and should not be in church leadership. So he was not inclined to interpret it as referring to women. Nevertheless, his understanding of the Greek forced him to acknowledge that it must apply to women. Now, I believe we can trust Chrysostom for 2 reasons. Number one, he knew Koine Greek better than anyone alive today. He wrote more Greek texts than any other church father. In fact, there's only one other Greek writer that has more text than Chrysostom, and that's Galen. And Chrysostom means golden mouth. And he was eloquent. He was the most eloquent speaker for the church of his day. And furthermore, so he knew Greek better than anyone alive today. and he was personally inclined against including women in leadership. Nevertheless, he understood that men and women also applies to women deacons. So if someone like that can do that, then we cannot legitimately exclude women based on that factor. Interestingly, both Doug Moo and Tom Schreiner have acknowledged that man of one woman does not exclude women overseers.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy in itself. Yeah. So on this topic, there was one thing that I wanted to specifically ask you about. So in your book, and you mentioned it here as well, you let's see if I can get it pulled up. There we go. So you say that 14 masculine pronouns is what the NIV and NAB insert in the English translations, but then when we look at the Greek text, you say there's no masculine pronouns. Is that just
He,
to
him,
be
or
clear?
his.
That's correct.
There are some masculine adjectives, but not masculine pronouns he, him, or his.
Interesting. Okay. So so that wasn't specifically what you said. So maybe like I've had some people, like some scholars friends, that have been a little confused by that, say that was maybe misleading. I'll put the quote back up there, and the reason is because well, where did it go actually? Yeah. So let's see, where's the specific not adding a single masculine pronoun. Yeah, I mean, you said it here yourself that there is no masculine pronoun, but then like, so if I can pull this up on my my little program here, and I wanted to ask you about this. So let's make this look nicer. There you go. All right, so we have tis, which in this translation is anyone. Some people have translated as men, but like for example, nominative masculine singular, and it is an indefinite pronoun. So some people might think, hey, that says it's a masculine pronoun, and you said that there's no masculine pronoun, so that's misleading. And tis is also used, I think it's in verse 5, and there's another masculine pronoun as well. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see that as maybe as misleading, or
it's gender neutral?
Okay.
It is not specifying masculine. It's the word for whoever.
So you would just so I guess maybe one problem. Yeah, here it is. The other one that's in verse 5, and then there is another pronoun in verse 10, which is otoi or photoi. But so it's gender neutral. Both of those are. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Whenever you have a group of people addressed, it is necessary to use the masculine form, even when there are women included in the group. That's just Greek convention. And you have it, for instance, in the Ten Commandments, where it says, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife. Well, does that mean it's okay to covet the neighbor's husband? No, it's just that it's conventional for the grammatically, for the male to be cited as example in a culture that is androcentric. It's true in Hebrew and it's true in Greek as well.
Okay. So just for clarity, just to make sure we understand you. So you would say that tis is neuter, is that what you said? Or
it's gender neutral.
Gender neutral.
It means whoever, anyone.
So would you say that, say for example, the Bible Hub here is misleading?
When Jesus says, whoever would come after me,
Right.
let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Does that apply only to men or also to women?
No, definitely to everybody.
Okay, but you see, that's a passage which does have masculine pronouns he, him, or his. But the tis means anyone. That's gender neutral. If you go through tis, every occurrence of tis in the New Testament is gender neutral. It refers to anyone or whoever. It's not intended to restrict it to masculines. The masculine form is used because the masculine form conventionally is used to refer to groups of people that include men or women. But the grammatically masculine form does not imply that only males are referred to.
Yeah.
So when in recent works, when I've stated what you quoted up there before, I've said there are no masculine pronouns he, him, or his. Because there's a different form for she, her, then there is this is a separate feminine spelling of the word for that. In the case of tis, there's no separate feminine spelling.
Right. That makes sense. So I guess some people have just had a problem with it because I guess tis can be used as a masculine pronoun, or maybe even some people would call it a masculine pronoun, but you said there was no masculine pronouns. So they've considered that misleading. But
what I try to say is there are no masculine pronouns he, him, or his. Being specific. I do that for two reasons. First, it's more correct because pronoun can be used in a variety of ways to include all kinds of things. And secondly, for most English readers, they know what he, him, or his means.
Yeah. And just for some clarity there, so I could see someone asking one more question, and then we'll be letting you go. I really appreciate the time you've given us. One more question on this. So, could you explain how specifically it works? So, like in a translation for like, for example, the NIV, or one of the ones that has he in it for a lot of these, it's like there's not a specifically a pronoun. Like it'll be like he is able to teach. I can't remember what's an example. I'll pull it up here. Now the overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, temperate. Verse 4, he must manage his own family. So in verse 4, the own house while managing. So there in Greek, there's no he in there, as you've already noted. If we're reading it literally, it's the own house while managing, or something along those lines. There's no specifically a Greek standalone pronoun. So where do they get the Greek? Where do they get the word he from? Can you explain that specifically?
Well, there's nothing in the Greek that gives the he. People insert the he because they assume that overseers could only be men, and therefore, why not add them? But the point is, in Greek, there are none. Right. So by adding them, we are not highlighting the masculine feel of the New Testament. We are inserting into the New Testament a masculine feel that is not there originally.
Right. Yeah. So,
but there are two versions which have no masculine pronouns: the Common English Bible and the Contemporary English version of the American Bible Society. Those have no masculine pronoun he, him, or his in either 1 Timothy 2 or Titus 1. 1 Timothy 3 or Titus 1.
Okay, so but yeah, any last thoughts on that before we get going here?
That would be this.
Okay.
If one looks at 1 Timothy 3:12, where it says, deacons must be men of one woman.
Mm-hmm.
When the preceding verse gives the qualifications for women deacons, using the same 4 qualifications in the same order that verse 8 gave for deacons, it's clear that men of one woman in verse 12 cannot exclude women because he's just specifically identified women. If men of one woman in verse 12 does not exclude women, and it does not, then the similar idiom, man of one woman, in the qualifications for overseer must not exclude women either.
Yeah. Yeah. I've also heard a lot of other scholars argue that there's also the worth mentioning where you have in the first few verses there, it's like, managing your family well. So like, would Paul really say that you can't be an overseer if you don't have a family? Or
exactly. These are not requirements, but exclusions. That if one does not manage one's family well, one cannot be an overseer. It's not saying that one must be married to be an overseer or must have multiple children old enough to take to be obedient or be under control, but rather if you're married and have children who are old enough to obey, they should be obedient. It's an exclusion rather than a requirement.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. It has been truly awesome. I really, really do appreciate it. A lot of people in the comment section are saying you've got some great stamina to just keep going for so long. So much appreciated.
Well, thank you very much for this wonderful privilege.
Yes, it's been so awesome. And I'll try not to drag it on any too longer. But yeah, everybody make sure to check out Dr. Payne's books here. And feel free to ask any questions in the comments. But otherwise, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.